Good morning and welcome to our latest Brunch and Learn. I hope you are all well today. What a fabulous week we're all having. If you're based in the UK, it's summer's arrived. It's wonderful. And yeah, long may it continue. So if we've not met before, I'm Becky. I'm founder and CEO here at Reflect Digital. We're a performance marketing agency that's here to unleash your potential. So we specialize in leveraging human behavior insights and using those to optimize the customer journey and using those across digital marketing campaigns. So hopefully you've received your brunch boxes if you ordered them. Let's hope the Royal Mail have done as well. Feel free to tuck in. If you've already eaten it, that's also fine. If you've got kids and they've eaten it, well, I'm sorry, you need to guard these things well. But yes, thank you so much to Erin and Lucy for arranging those and getting those out in the post. We want today to be interactive, so you're going to have the opportunity to pop questions in and they will magically appear here. Carl, who is joining us today, is going to run us through his session, and then we've got lots of questions that you've already submitted, but please do top them up if there's new ones that come to mind. So the best setup for you is to use muted standard view in your window to give you the best experience. And today we are joined by Carl, our fantastic SEO director here at Reflect Digital. And he's bringing you a talk which is fresh from the main stage at Brighton SEO. Now, I was there front row whooping for him, and it was absolutely incredible. So I know you are in for a treat today. So Carl is our SEO director. He is also a dancing superstar. I'll let him share about that if he wants to. And he's going to talk to us today about content clusters and how, when you get this right, it's going to drive human-centric conversions. Content clusters are a part of a really powerful SEO strategy that can improve your site structure. It boosts your user experience, but most importantly, it drives conversions. And that's the thing that all businesses are looking for. So he's going to share practical tips on how you can build them into your site and make your existing content work harder for you. So I think it's time to hand over to Carl. I will see you for Q&A afterwards. Carl.
Thank you for that introduction. So I'm going to dive right into our title. The title is Using Content Clusters for Human-Centric Conversions. And that's marketing speak for put humans first and tailor your content to them in a content cluster format so that you improve your conversions. So what does that really mean? One of the things that we want to get out of this is that we want to put in place things that will stop your visitors from leaving your site so that you've got a greater chance of actually converting. So one of the things that came out of Forbes, obviously a very good company, and their website review was that if you get this right, you can stop 61% of your users actually leaving. And we'll touch on that stat a little bit more later on. So content clusters, what you might know already. Oh, they aren't new. So information architecture, website organization has been around pretty much since the dawn of the web. But in 2017, HubSpot got together and decided to formalize what a content cluster was. We put a lot of marketing behind it. And ever since, we've had content clusters or topic clusters as a format that you can use within your SEO strategy. And they've been written about quite a lot. So if you want to go away from this talk and find a little bit more about them, go and have a look at Yoast, HubSpot, SEMrush, Ahrefs. A lot of SEO departments have also bought courses. So Brian Dean sells one called SEO That Works. SEMrush have one and HubSpot have one. They're also around that content cluster kind of structure and what it involves. They're often named differently. So because we're marketeers and obviously we take these to market, I'm going to talk about content clusters in different ways. So we might call them cornerstone content if you're using WordPress. We might call them content pillars. Some people call them topic clusters. Some people talk about them as power pages. But they really all mean the same thing. It's an organizational structure that you can use within your website to benefit your customers and allow them to access information. So one of the main reasons that you really want to establish a content cluster for is to get ahead of EAT. Now, we talk about EAT quite a lot. And one of the main reasons that this keeps coming to the forefront is that Google keep launching algorithm updates. And whenever they do, since November 2023, I think it's been part of every single update that we've brought out. So how does a content cluster really, really help you? So if you break it down into its consistent parts, you've got the experience. So a content cluster is going to talk about a topic in depth. It gives you a chance to put across all your personal anecdotes, the things that actually relate to users, practical applications, things that actually you've done in the past. So you might choose to include case studies. And by kind of including those types of things within your content clusters, you can really go into depth and demonstrate your experience. Also, by doing that, you're also going to demonstrate your expertise. So what do you actually know about a subject? How do you talk about it? How do you kind of relate that to your customers? You're then going to interlink it all together, so you can use that to benefit from an authority point of view, both contextually. So I've written all about this subject because I'm putting so much information together. I'm going to generate authority around it, and I'm also going to link it all together so I can pass authority between those pages. And ultimately, that's going to result in a lot of trust. So this obviously requires quite a lot of time, research, and effort. So in order to produce a content cluster, we're going to actually have to dig into what keywords people use. What do they search? What's the intent behind those keywords? When somebody types a particular thing, what do they really mean? Right? You're then going to take that and put that into a plan, which involves creating high quality pillar content, so the bit that sits in the central hub, and then all of the cluster content or the supporting content that goes around it. We're going to really dig into depth, and we're going to work out how we're going to link in between those pieces. And then ultimately, once that's all completed and it's launched, we're going to have to promote it. So that can mean putting it out onto social channels. That can mean establishing it within the navigation of your website. It can mean doing PR behind it and letting people know that it actually exists. Now, what that means really is that content clusters are quite often overlooked, because when we're designing SEO strategies, we're really talking about what can we get as a quick win? What can I use to prove to my customers or to my stakeholders that this SEO strategy is actually working and it's actually valuable? So when we're actually going through this, the content cluster is a big win. It's not a quick one. Now, you've probably seen quite a lot of diagrams around content clusters if you've done any reading at all. So in the middle, we've got a single pillar page. Now, it's then backed up by a series of high quality content, which we call clusters. There can be subtopics, or there can be supporting pieces, and they're all interlinked. So what's a pillar content, piece of pillar content? So a piece of pillar content is something that's going to form the hub, the topic, the idea that you want to sell or get across to a particular user. It's going to have all of the touch points around that particular subject. Now, it doesn't need to be absolutely everything on one page. That's what your clusters are for. But we do need to introduce every topic. The cluster content is ultimately then going to be connected to that hub page through strategic internal linking. So if we're talking about strategic internal linking, what that means is I've got to plan it out beforehand. I've got to work out whether I'm going to use a macro site, whether I'm going to actually do a table of contents section that links to all the relevant parts, whether I'm actually going to just use contextual links with like optimized anchor text to link to people through the journey, and how that all fits together is quite important to how you build out that cluster. Now, ultimately, if you get this right, what you're going to do is you're going to increase page consumption. Now, apologies for using this phrase, it's a bit northern, but page consumption is a bit of a moo metric. Yeah, it's something that we kind of discount quite a lot. But if people are actually going through more pages on your site, it means they're actually digesting the content that you're providing. Ultimately, we want to drive people towards an action. So we sometimes discount page consumption as a metric, but it is still very important when you're considering content clusters, because if I've got it right and I've linked people to particular ideas, it allows them to explore depending on the stage of the user journey that they're at. They might not necessarily be in the mood to purchase now. You actually want to go and explore and research. So if we do, we can increase the perceived value of your site. So if we connect everything, we write everything, we go into depth, we're increasing that perceived value because people can find all the different information that relates to their stage of the journey. One of the other things that it also does is it increases the perceived value of your site in relation to a search engine. Now, if you look at some of the Google Leak documents, right, they relate to PageRank. Now, PageRank, Google stopped providing them the scores in 2016, but it doesn't mean it disappeared. You've got a lot of tools like Ahrefs and SEMrush that tell you what the URL rating for a particular page is. So there is some kind of synergy between those two metrics and PageRank. That's why they were originally developed. But if we're interconnecting pages, they can share in the authority of other pages on the site. There is a problem, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But everybody should be doing a content cluster, so why aren't they? Now, there's an obstacle, and that obstacle is that you need to get all of these people that are involved in your content cluster to understand, first of all, what you're driving at, to understand what it is that you need from them and what they need to do, and get them all together. So that means that we've got a lot of people involved that are stakeholders driving towards a project that's going to take a lot of planning, a lot of research, and a lot of effort to deliver without necessarily understanding what the end result is. So instead, one of the things that you tend to find with a lot of sites is you have a really good idea for content and it just ends up in the blog. It's not really connected to the rest of the site. It's part of a content cluster, or it's part of an idea or a piece of intent. But it doesn't really connect. So I'm going to talk to you about a coffee brand. So what happened was we got presented with a well-known coffee brand. They came to us and we proposed that they get went to a content cluster. And at phase one, what we did was we researched quite heavily into how people shop for coffee, what they actually do, what in terms of roasting, what do they actually do in terms of origins of that coffee, what they do in terms of their buying habits, how much information they need. And stage one was basically about getting all of the content together, getting it up onto the site. Stage two is going to be connecting all of that and researching all that strategic linking. But already what we found, we got 980 top 10 keywords that were brand new. We got a 300% increase in traffic, and we're only at phase one. So we talked about the obstacle. So one of the things that we need to be aware of is that obstacle in terms of content clusters exists. Okay? So we need to involve the right team right at the beginning of the project. We need to go and involve stakeholders. We need to have a chat with our web designer to propose a structure to him. We need to talk to the front of house, the people that are customer facing, the sales team, get all the data that you've got, right? Make them take ownership of what they're going to deliver for you, right? And ultimately what that means is getting hold of your data. So the data that you have that speaks to your customers, the bit that nobody else has, the bit that says, these customers consistently ring up and provide me with the same 5 problems, or these customers consistently phone me up and ask me the same 6 or 7 questions, or they talk to me about this, or they don't understand this particular bit of the site, or why this works in this particular way. That could be really, really useful when you design a content cluster, because you can address those problems and move forward. Yeah. So using your data about your users allows you to connect with your customers at a different level. I'm going to give you some examples of where content clusters are still being used today. So, AppSumo, go and have a look at them. What they do is they do a database cluster. Now, a database cluster isn't a traditional format of content cluster. What it means is that they've programmed their database along the lines of different tags for different products. So everything is marked and understood to be a functional product, or it is a type of product that appeals to a certain customer. And then what happens off the back of that is they develop categories based on that information. So if they launch a new product and they tag it up, if there isn't a category that's suitable, the site will actually create it. Now, the BBC use a technology cluster. So if you want to know anything about technology, you can go and find the technology hub. Ultimately, it looks a bit like a blog category, but it interconnects all of the different pieces that are around technology to each other, which makes it a cluster. Hootsuite have designed a piece that is around selling on Facebook, or ultimately marketing your Facebook, called An Ultimate Guide to Facebook Marketing. It's been around for about 4 or 5 years now, but it's still ranking really well and driving a lot of traffic. It shows that if you do invest that kind of time into your content clusters, it doesn't necessarily need to be every single time. You can just go back and update them, and they're still valuable as you move forward, even when things change as quickly as things like Meta. BrainStation have actually launched a careers page about how to be a cybersecurity analyst. They've included things like what would be your average working hours, what would be your salary, what would you expect to do as part of the job role. And again, it touches on all the different things that you'd really want to know if you're even considering that as one of your careers. And it makes it very, very valuable both to users and to them, because they ultimately want people to go and engage with that content. So where do we start? We always start with keywords and search intent. So I'm also going to touch on this. So if you were a charity and you were writing a page about poverty, okay, your ultimate page, your hub page, might be understanding poverty, causes, impacts, and pathways to solutions in the UK and beyond. Right? Nice convoluted title. But ultimately, what would then happen is that would break down into things like, what is poverty? So one of your clusters might actually introduce what poverty looks like in the UK, but the cluster actually dives a little bit deeper. You might also write a cluster around the scale of poverty, right? So what does it look like globally and nationally? And what are the key causes? What are the major impacts? You might also talk about food poverty, fuel poverty, and all of those different aspects can actually be included within your clusters, but they relate to your main hub page. So when you connect all of those up, it means that you're talking more around the topic than just around the subject. I love this example. My sister lived in Greece for 14 years. She lived on Zante. So if we talk about writing a holiday page for Greece, and you say, right, I'm going to go on holiday, I'm going to go to Greece, where do you actually mean? You tend to mean a destination. You tend to mean one of the islands or a particular place. So it might be that you start off with, these are the holidays that we offer in Greece. But that then breaks out into all the different islands or all the different resorts that you offer. And subsequently, you can then add on things like hiring a car in this area. What's the culture like? What's the nightlife like? And really, really build out a lot of useful information that helps somebody to make a decision that this is the place for me. This is where I really want to go on holiday. I absolutely love going to the beach. All right, there's 5 of them over there. And now I know where they are. I know what they are. I know who they're suitable for. I know that this one has bird watching. I know that this one's really, really good for fishing. This one's good for sunbathing. And you can really build a picture for the users. So the other thing is that we need to understand intent. Now, whenever we talk about intent is SEO, I think we do it at a bit of a disservice. So we'll quite often process commercial, transactional, informational queries, and we can get those out of things like SEMrush and Ahrefs during our keyword research. It's not really where intent stops, though. So I'm going to tell you a story about 2019. So in 2019, there were a lot of mortgage companies that all got together and they wanted to try and target first-time buyer mortgage purchasers. So what they did was they looked at first-time buyer mortgages and they knew that this was a really, really important market for them. But when they did the keyword research, it was about 2,400 searches a month. It's not a small number, but it's nowhere near mortgages, which was at 200,000. So when they actually started asking users what they meant when they typed in mortgages, they found that 85% of those people that were typing in mortgages actually wanted a first-time buyer mortgage. That's 170,000. But they weren't typing in first-time buyer mortgages because the intent behind mortgages was first-time buyers looking for mortgages. It wasn't just mortgages. So what happened was a lot of the big banks and the big building societies changed the way that their architecture for their site came across by incorporating things that were relating to first-time buyer mortgages onto their site. So it's still true today. If you look at Nationwide, this is a screenshot of their site, and we've got in the bottom a nice first-time buyer. But what's also interesting is you've got switch your existing deal. So people who are typing in mortgages are also talking to you about wanting to switch the mortgage up, right? Why might you want to switch your mortgage? Well, actually, I want to move home. Why might you be looking for a mortgage? Well, I want to buy and borrow more. I've got some equity in my house. So that journey and that cluster develops based on that intent. But ultimately, the people are still typing the same thing in. They're still typing mortgages in. So if we build a structure that is defined by keywords and intent, what does it really look like? So I talked to you about Greece. I love this as an example. So you've got a destination page, and ultimately that destination would talk around things like car hire for this destination, where to go and eat, what's the weather like, what do I need to pack? Have you got any photos of it? Have you got any FAQs? Right? Have we got any ideas, inspiration, things like itineraries, points of interest? Is there a map of the place so I can find my way around when I get there? And when you actually evolve that site-wide, you can actually evolve that into an ecosystem within your site that talks about lots of different destinations or a particular country that branches out into the destinations where you actually offer out holidays. But this just shows simply that the country can connect to the destination, but ultimately car hire can connect to the different car hire pages. The nightlife can connect to the different nightlife pages, so that you can actually make a choice and understand what it is that you actually want out of your holiday. But we need to consider users, not just keywords. So no use trying to sell something to somebody that really doesn't want it or need it. So when you're viewing this, just for reference point, we've got Henry Cavill and Andrew Garfield. That is Superman and Spider-Man. So both of these are around age 41. Both of them are affluent and wealthy. One likes Warhammer and stretchy blue tights. The other is a friendly neighborhood guy who likes climbing. So when we're talking about personas and not demographics, your demographics is basically going to target someone based on where they live and what they earn, whereas your persona is really going to get down into the depth. It's going to start considering what people are motivated by. So we're going to do another one. This is Lady Gaga and Amanda Siegfried. I always say her name wrong. Apologies if you're watching, Amanda. So both around the age 39. Both again affluent and wealthy. But beyond that, they've both got an interest in singing, dancing, acting. But there's only really Amanda who's interested in tennis. So if I really want to go out and sell a luxury tennis membership for an exclusive club, targeting my ad spend towards Lady Gaga is going to be pretty useless. But if I understand her persona, right, and I understand the persona of Amanda, I would target my ads towards her. So I can get a lot more value out of doing things this way. I also need to optimize for search experience. So if we're putting users first, I need to understand how people behave when they arrive on my site. So if I put a lot of time and effort into the architecture of my site, somebody might say, I don't really know what to do from here. And they might think this is quite annoying. And they feel really frustrated. But what that results in from a user perspective is that they then leave your site and go somewhere else. Now, if I don't know that that happens, I can't really address it. But if I'm talking to my users and I'm studying it and I'm understanding how these people behave, what motivates them, how they interact with my site, I can actually get at a point where it says, okay, well, 70% of my visitors got to this stage of the journey, we found it incredibly frustrating and then they left. So let's fix it. Let's make sure that they continue on that journey. Or they didn't find the information that they wanted, so then they left. So let's fix it. When we're talking to users, we need to look at both emotional and rational decision making. So I did steal this from our behavioural department. I hope you don't mind, Lottie, Izzy, Ariane. Now, what this basically means is that your rider is a rational decision maker, right? He's steering someone down the path. But ultimately, if you can connect with someone's emotions, the elephant, which represents those emotional decision making skills, is going to go where it wants. So if we talk to people in the right way, we can influence their decisions. So talking to someone's rational mind really means let's use logic. Okay. So I'm going to find all the things that are logically irritating and I'm going to answer them. So if you're struggling with something, a problem, I'm going to provide you with the solution. If you're going to ask me a question, I'm going to give you the answer to that question. I'm going to make sure that it makes sense. If there's a main reason for you to do something, I'm going to tell you about it. It really doesn't work when we talk emotionally. So if I need to inspire someone from an emotional point of view, I need to make them want it. So that might mean a change in the way that I display media. So I might use videos instead of images. It might mean that I need to use social proof. So I need to tell you, the 15, 20 people that bought this previously, they really loved it. I might need to tell you that it's running out. So if you don't buy it now, it's not going to be there when you come back. I also might need to make out that it's on offer, right? So you've got to buy it now because it's cheaper. But there's lots and lots of different ways that I can interact. Now we can use things like behavioral nudges, social nudges. We can identify with you as a user, so we can use social identity. So if you feel like you're part of a group, we can make you feel like this content was designed for you, right? And that it actually talks to you, so that when we're actually trying to take you or inspire you to make another step, we're talking both rationally because we've answered all your questions, but we're also connecting with you. Now, search journeys aren't linear. And I think this is one thing that, especially in the modern world, marketing departments really need to get a handle on. So Google provided a big white paper, which is about supporting people through the messy middle. And if you download these slides, it's worth having a look at Micah's journey to an electric toothbrush and just how many touch points there are before he actually goes and buys something. It gets up to about 106. Now, we as marketeers tend to simplify this quite a bit. So we go for a traditional funnel and we say, right, okay, well, people are exposed to it and we identify their need or we get awareness. So they need awareness content. They need to understand how this actually works, right? And they go into a consideration or evaluation process and they start comparing what we are offering against what everyone else is offering. And then they're going to go and buy. And then what happens if we do a really, really good job is we're going to retain them for any future purchases and nurture them a bit. And then they're going to tell everybody how wonderful we are. They're going to put out a nice review for us. Brilliant. Okay. Now, my brain works slightly differently to most. So I just wanted to put this into context. If you take that traditional funnel and you say, right, okay, I've got a user who's arrived on my site. Okay. If they look for awareness content, because that's the stage of journey that they're at, and they don't find it on your site, they're going to leave. If they're looking for consideration content and they don't find it on your site, they're going to leave. If they're looking for purchase content on your site and they don't find it, they're going to leave. Right? Because ultimately they're trying to fulfill that journey. Now, it isn't going to be linear. They aren't going to follow it exactly as I'm at consideration point. They might need several different instances. This is where your content clusters really, really come to life because they give you an opportunity to connect all of the service offerings that you've got to the content that people also want to digest as part of that journey. So they can go backwards and forwards without having to leave your site. Now, what tends to happen is most people concentrate on the purchase content. We've got a really good offer. Here it is. There you go. Buy it. Without considering that actually there are so many different stages. And just because somebody's at awareness stage doesn't mean they're not going to buy. Just because somebody's at consideration stage doesn't mean they're going to buy. It's just fewer people in that stage are actually going to buy. So another point to consider is the speed at which we can access this information. It really does matter. So if I talk to you about page speed and you've got a bit of a history with SEO or digital marketing, what usually happens at this point is we've got poor page speed. I'm going to ring the tech guy who's going to go and have a look at some images and some scripting. We're going to run the Google page speed test on the home page. He's going to tell me how it performs on a mobile or a desktop. I'm going to get a score, and then we're going to work at making that score better. That's traditional page speed in a nutshell, and we know it's a ranking factor. So great, you should definitely do it, but it's not the whole equation. So if you're looking at page speed, you're going to find stats all around the internet. Now, some of them vary, but ultimately, about 4 seconds of load time, and I lose 47% of your visitors. It's a big, scary number, right? And I know it's a ranking factor, so great. I'm going to rush off. I'm going to get my tech guy to go and sit there, and the next 8 hours fixing the page speed on my site. Brilliant. All right, job done. I've got a nice, pretty score. I can go and show my stakeholders that it's gone from 50 to 70. All right, it's now faster. And I'm going to recover more of my visitors. Great. I can put a tick against it. But then we don't consider how people digest information. So the stat that we mentioned earlier in terms of Forbes is that 61% of your visitors are leaving your site, usually for a competitor, if we don't find information in 5 seconds. Now let's think about that for a moment. We went through the fact that if I can't find information on your site for an awareness, consideration, or purchase content, that I am going to probably leave your site. But that accounts for 61% of your visitors. So I'll put this into context for you. If you've got a 10 grand marketing budget, £6,100 of your marketing budget has just walked out the door because you didn't consider the different stages of a user's journey. Now that applies for all your marketing. 61%, a big number. So, round up some points for you. So, inability to find information creates a negative brand perception. All right? Now, brand perception is becoming more and more important, right? We've got a lot of things that are being launched into the search engine. We've got search feature snippets. There's some evidence to support that after March's Google algorithm update, there's another 1.3 million search features been released. It's not confirmed yet, so don't quote me on it, but I was reading that yesterday. So it means that your brand's going to be more and more important as we move forward. So if you're creating a negative perception of your brand search is going to go down. Confusing information architecture makes it really frustrating. Or in a nutshell, if I can't find my way to the information that I need in order to do something, it's very, very frustrating. So you're not going to stick around, you're going to leave. If I have poor navigation on my site, it can have a negative impact on SEO. No, we don't talk about this enough. Back in 20 years ago, we used to say that about 80% of your time should be spent designing your navigation when you're designing your website. So one of the reasons behind that is that connecting all those pages does allow them to pass authority between each other. It also allows people to find stuff really, really easily. So if I'm not actually connecting stuff into the navigation, then I'm not allowing Google crawlers or search engine crawlers to go and find it and digest that information in the same way. I'm not linking authority through to them. Missing content. Now, most of the SEOs are going to go through and do some kind of content gap or competitor analysis and then find that they're missing bits of content. So it has a really negative effect on SEO. We use it as strategy. We consider it and say, well, you've got a keyword gap between this and this, right? Or a content gap between this and this. Should really write content around this particular subject to fill that gap, right? To get some benefit. And if that missing information is part of your sales journey, right? So I need to be able to compare you against your nearest competitor. I can either do it on their site or yours. So if I'm going off to their site, it's not going to reflect very favorably about you. So that can be really, really important in terms of my sales journey, my ability to convert. So what if? I'm going to play a little bit of a game called What If, right? And all I want you to do is imagine that we can just magically wave a wand and fix these things, yeah? So what if we understood how our users search to find us? So what if we actually considered personas, not just demographic? And we sat there and we actually spent the time to go and research at the beginning of this particular type of project. And we involved all the stakeholders. And when we did that, what happened was we got some really, really good actionable data that we were able to farm out to the rest of the business and say, our users behave like this, they want to do this. That really influenced your marketing. What if we understood what caused the pain points? You know, what if we took on board some of the frustration that we create when we design websites in a particular way, and we actually went about trying to fix them, or we answered the question. So for my first 10 years in SEO, most of my conversations were, so how do you sell this product? And somebody would tell you, and you go, where do you say that on your website? And the answer was, it's not there, because somebody might copy it. All right. So how's somebody going to journey through your site if they don't understand that that's how you do it? So putting that information together, talk to the users. What if you can connect on an emotional level? So what if I actually try to use the way in which you behave to talk to you as a user? What if I'm going to go and book a holiday and all I'm using is pictures and everybody else is using videos that show you all the inspiration? Or I take the opportunity to go and write some inspirational itineraries, and I show you where you can go and what you can do and what it feels like to be here. You'd be a lot more inclined to buy. What if they understood our personas, the motivations, the things that drive people? And what if you were able to map all of that information that I've just been talking about onto a website? It keep users on your site. First win, straight away. I've got all the touch points that you need in order to make a decision. You don't need to go anywhere else. It's going to reduce the user frustration. So suddenly you're going to feel like this brand is actually taking on board the things that drive you absolutely crazy. And they fixed them. Great, I can carry on. You're going to improve the brand perception. So in the modern world, we've already talked about it. It's important to build your brand, get that brand search up, right? So people are also going to be more willing to go out and share by word of mouth. They're going to talk to you about your brand in a really, really positive light. Keep building. It's also going to help guide people towards making the right purchase because they understand the things about your product or service that you want to tell them. They understand where you've got expertise. They understand that they can access the case studies more easily. They understand your personal anecdotes, the way that you practically implement stuff, your experience, how you're different from everybody else, which is a really, really tough job sometimes to sell. Ultimately, that's going to help your site make more money because everything's interconnected. You've got all the information that you need to make a decision, and it's connected all together to the things that you actually offer. So ultimately, that probably look like a confident. Thank you very much.
Love it. That's probably the mic drop moment. Shame we don't have an actual mic we can drop, although I'm sure our AV team wouldn't be very happy with us dropping mics. But amazing. Thank you so much, Carl. And we're going to share these slides with everybody afterwards if you want to go back over those. Now, we've had lots of live questions in. The audience are very engaged, which is really good to hear, as well as we've got questions that came in before. If we don't get to your question, we will get an answer back to you. So, so don't panic if we don't answer it. But let's start with some of the live ones, because I think these are really relevant to what you've been talking about specifically. So we've got Philip Brown from Brown and Hudson, who said, for clients who would like you to audit their content through the lens of content clusterization, what are the typical steps in your process?
Okay. So I think the first thing you've got to understand is who you're competing with. So we'll probably start with competitor analysis to find out what gaps you've missed. It's a bit of a shortcut because ultimately what you're trying to achieve with the content cluster is to talk about subjects or around the subject. So if I know that somebody else is talking around something that you're not, and it's relevant, I can incorporate that in. It's then in-depth keyword research. Have we missed anything? Have your competitors missed anything? Those are lovely moments. If you find something that somebody else has missed, right, and you've missed it as well, it's all new, and we can really, really get excited about it and go and develop that content. That's probably my starting point. It's then what do you rank for, as in how well is the content you've produced at the moment ranking, and obviously we can go and have a look at it from just an SEO perspective, but if you take it to Lottie and the team, she can give you a different angle that nobody else has got. She can look at it from a behavioural point of view, and we can start digging into the motivations of your customers, what's actually really, really going to make them care about the things that you want to do.
Definitely, yeah. And I suppose that's a nice starting point when people have got budget to do the behavioural side of research, the stuff that you can get out of, whether it's a written survey or whether it's in-person interviews or telephone interviews, that you find those little things, don't you? And as you said as well, actually in the session, the data people already have that they're not using. So those telephone records and there's so many places to find that information, isn't there? But no, that's brilliant, fantastic. We've then got Nick Smith from Seed. So thank you, Nick. Please, can you clarify how to apply personas to the content cluster strategy? You mentioned targeted ads, but I'm not sure how we'd incorporate them into the strategy.
Okay. So if you look at the personas, what you're really saying is what motivates this particular user and what do they care about, right? So if you take my silly examples, right, are we targeting people that care about, in Henry Cavill's case, Warhammer 40,000 for a Warhammer 40,000 site, right? Or are we just targeting people that fit in the monetary demographic? If you're then looking at that from an ads point of view, you can connect those messages on an emotional level to your content. So you can say, right, okay, I now know that I've got the audience set. I'm targeting based on interests in this. Okay, great. And I can now tailor the content around my ads so that it reflects that. But if you find that, another example might be, if you find that somebody wants to sign up for a particular service and the most important thing is speed, okay, so I need to be able to do this thing in 30 minutes, right? Well, that might be your catchline on your ads.
Yeah.
Okay, I can deliver you this service in 30 minutes, right? Or if you find that it might be social identity, right? Okay, I need to feel part of a group. So we talk about motor racing. Okay, if you want to connect with people who are motor racing, there's a certain type of language that we use in order to connect with those people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess so, and from an ads perspective, are we thinking about bucketing people into remarketing buckets? So I suppose back to your travel example. So I land on the Greece page and then I click on Zante versus Crete. You now know I'm a Zante person. So that's not necessarily too much about me, but that's where I'm interested in. But then actually on that page, if it's learn about the history versus the pubs and nightclubs, you're going to know, well, what's my motivation? And then we can show ads. Nice. I like it. We've got a two-part question here from John JB Russell from Digital Groundwork. Thank you, John. So what tool do you use for keyword research to align with search intent? So we'll start there.
Okay. So I use Ahrefs and SEMrush. I also tend to use also Ask, and for particular big keywords, we tend to do a little bit of manual analysis of the search results as well.
Yeah.
Especially with the changing search results as they are at the moment, you need to take advantage of the fact that there are search features, there are AI overviews. You need to understand whether, just as an example, whether if you're writing a recipe, whether it comes up with a physical blue link or whether it comes up with a video or a how-to guide, or and that doesn't really come out of keyword research necessarily. There's still a bit of grunt work there.
Yeah.
You can automate some of those processes if you have a map. But,
yeah, we're lucky to have a map.
Yeah.
And I guess also on that, from the intent perspective, because a lot of the platforms like SEMrush have their transactional, and I can never remember what they all are. But they're obviously automated on what they're seeing, and they've got an algorithm working that out. But I guess our behavioural team do a lot of that manually sometimes, don't they, off the back of the research to tie it together, because to really get it right, it needs a bit of that manual human touch on it.
I think ultimately, if you've decided on a topic, part of this is like the bit that stands in the way of everybody doing a content cluster and the bit that makes it so exciting are the same thing. Like you've got to put a lot of work into it, and some of that nobody likes doing manual keyword research. I don't think I've met anybody who likes sitting there scrolling through search results. But ultimately, you have to do some of that. But you can do the bit before it, so you can do your stratified random sample. So you can put down the keyword research to the things that are really, really going to drive traffic. I know the search volume behind this. Right now, let's go and analyze, the top 10 keywords.
Yeah.
So I'm not doing 1,000, but we do need that manual.
Yeah. And it's so critical because you get this bit wrong and then you go and focus in the wrong area.
Exactly. Yeah.
So this is where the results start from here. You get this bit right is the key. So the second part of John's question was, how do you use data outputs from Google Ads to inform organic content, intent clusters, and on-page implementation?
So how do I use ad outputs for what?
So data outputs from Google Ads to inform your organic content, intent clusters, and on-page implementation. So I guess that total search that we work on.
Yeah, I think one of the key bits that you can get out of ads. This is another way of referencing it, but ads work a bit like a divining rod. All right, so you know that there's water there already. So if I know that, for example, users who type in a particular keyword are going to be converting more and more at a higher level than typing in something else, I can use that to reflect the way that my content works. So a particular piece around a particular piece keyword would then become commercial intent. I can then write it accordingly. So it might be that this particular keyword becomes on a product listing, and I target a product listing towards that particular keyword because I know that the people that type it in actually just want to purchase.
Yeah.
Similarly, what I might find is that there is a lot of wastage in my ad campaign at the start when we were doing experimentation. So I might get a lot of views, not a lot of clicks. Okay, well, why is that? Right? I might equally get a lot of clicks that don't convert into purchase. So is it that people actually just need information? And I can use that information in conjunction with things like Ahrefs and SEMrush to go and find out what those keywords mean, what there's around it, and then find out whether there's like search features around it, or what is it that someone actually really expects when we type this in.
Yeah. And I guess our behavioral team all the time are testing things in paid ads that then we bring back to SEO, because it's like, well, we now know that this worked better. People clicked more on this version of the ad than this one.
Absolutely.
So therefore we should lead with that motivation on the landing page and the content, etc., from an SEO perspective.
Yeah, and I do think it's when you're looking at it from a total search point of view, I it's not always true, but we have to kind of almost predict the future in SEO. So I'm going to work towards something for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12 months, right, in terms of a strategy. Well, I've got the answer in paid. Like, does that keyword do what I expect? Let's turn it on, get it going. Right, okay. Now, they should work together. We should complement each other. I can influence the way people behave by changing the copy in conjunction with like the behavioral team's work. But I can already kind of shortcut the race by using paid or using any kind of paid, that is. So not just Google, Meta, TikTok, whatever. And I can drive traffic to the site and see if it works in the way that I expect. And I don't need a monstrous budget to do it.
Yeah, no, I love that. Brilliant. So that was the last of the live questions, but do keep them coming in if you do have any others. So just diving back into some of the ones that were submitted before. So we had Rachel from Crips. Hi, Rachel. Hope you're out there today. How do you recommend balancing SEO-driven content clusters with maintaining an authentic human voice that resonates with readers and drives genuine conversions?
Yeah, so I read this and hopefully we answered some of it during the presentation. I think ultimately SEO has changed a lot in the 10, 15 years. We're not trying to game the system anymore. We're ultimately, we obviously want to rank, but you've got to put your humans first, collectively.
Yes, yeah, like that.
Yeah. And if you don't, you're going to fall into a trap at some point.
Yeah.
But the information that you're putting together should be relevant to the people that you're dealing with. Now, again, if you go back to that data equation, if I've got all this data, right, that tells me how my users behave, right? Okay, I can write it in an SEO format, right, so that actually my titles are optimized, the page structure follows a logical chain that Google can follow rather than a mess. But what incorporating that data within your content pieces is super valuable, because then I've got a piece that reflects what Google wants to see in terms of a keyword, but I've then got content that's real and it actually talks to the users and it answers the questions.
Yeah, I think we're so lucky with how SEO's evolved, and I guess it had to evolve this way to be more about humans, because actually Google's algorithm these days is looking for what humans want. So actually that balance isn't as hard to do as it used to be, whereas previously you had to do a lot more to go, oh, I need to please the algorithm. That doesn't feel very human. It's
I always think as well, one of the things is, if you're a member of any of the SEO forums, like I've been doing this long enough to go through black hat, go through grey, and then realise the error of my ways. So I can still quite easily game the system. Right? And there is always a cheat. There's always a cheat code. The problem is, would you bank your business on something that cheats? And the answer is no, not if it's sensible, because you're going to pay for it at some point. And what we want to do is we want to build sustainable sales, right? Sustainable revenue and sustainable growth. And the only way to do that is to talk to the humans, right? and optimize it from an SEO perspective.
Yeah, love that. Love that. So then we had a question from Dan Stobbs from Radium. Dan, thank you for your question. So different experts say pillar pages should be used in different ways. So some say they should be visible on your website, for example, via the main menu or a resources section. Others say they shouldn't be navigable to your site and should be only found in organic search. What are your thoughts and what would you recommend?
Okay, so the guys that recommend not connecting it to the main site, a lot of the time it's a bit of an old trick. What it used to be was that pillar pages would be developed, right? You spend a lot of time in doing it, and it's quite difficult to get links to product pages. There seems quite a lot of experts recommending that you build a pillar page, you disconnect it from your site, get lots and lots of authority, and then after X period of time, you delete it all and route that URL to your product page, which does pass some link authority. But if you take this back to its beginning, the reason that we're writing this is because we found something that somebody needs, right? So if I make it inaccessible on my site, it doesn't make sense, right? And ultimately, by connecting it into the ecosystem of my site, if I do get links, what I can do is I can pass those through the navigation and I can pass the authority for the rest of my site. So should it be included in the main navigation is a bit of a different question. And again, it depends on the subject and the business that you're actually creating. But should it be connected to the rest of your site? Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. So we've got a couple of questions that are similar. So I'm going to group these together. So we've got Nina from Guide Dogs. Hi, Nina. And Steve from Blue Cross. Both asked a similar question around, are there any unique factors you would consider for creating content clusters within the charity sector?
But I think depending on what the charity is, sometimes charities need to be reactive. So one of the things that content clusters does is it gives you an opportunity to talk around the subject before it happens. So I don't know if this would apply to guide dogs particularly, but maybe to Blue Cross. But if you're dealing with a particular country or an area where something happens, right, you might want to talk around that country and the things that you know going on along politically, or from let's say there's somewhere that gets a volcano once every 10 years. Right? When that happens, that's quite a serious thing, and there's going to be a charity effort and a relief effort that goes alongside it. But you might know that that's going to happen at some point within the next 10 years. So what I potentially do is write a piece of content that says this area here is known for volcanoes. This is the last time it erupted. This is how it all worked. Now this is why it happened. And then when you actually need that piece of content to be reactive, there's already an acknowledgement from Google that you're an authority on it. There's already a URL structure in place that you can kind of relate into. And what you do is you connect that relief effort into it. And hook it all up, and you've got all the kind of surrounding cluster information that's already developed the authority you need to rank. And it gets you a little bit quicker down the journey. In relation to guide dogs specifically, I'm assuming they'll have points in time where they need fundraising or particular like like too many or too few puppies, or whatever the problem is. So you can write around the journey that leads up to that particular problem, rather than just talking about that problem and then reference it when it happened.
Yeah, makes sense. This final killer question from Carl. Question in from Michael Hornby Hobby. So how valuable is content strategy within business in 2025, especially for those looking for commercial value and revenue drivers? Carl.
So the simple answer is very. One of the main reasons behind that is it is an instrument of change. But if I want to drive more customers, I can use it to rank better. If I want to talk to the different users at a different stage of their journey and implement content structure, if I want to demonstrate something that I do differently, I can use content. But I think one of the most important things is to understand that content strategy is not just words.
Yeah.
It is very, very much about a multimedia approach. Whether you use video, whether you use text itself, images, it all has to combine in order to drive people, depending on where they sit in the journey.
Love that. Thank you so much, Carl. You have been fantastic. I've learned a lot, even though it was the second time I saw it. You added some new nuggets in there, which was brilliant. So for everyone that's joined us today, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your questions. As I say, if we haven't answered your question, we will get an answer over to you in the next few days, maybe beginning of next week. If you didn't finish filling out the feedback, please do. We will get a follow-up over to you. We will share the slides. Our next Brunch and Learn is our mid-year Ask the Experts panel, which is happening in the early June. We're going to share that link to you now. We still have some brunch boxes available, so you still have a chance to get the coveted brunch box. But please get your name down on the list if you'd like to come and join us. We'd love to see you there. Enjoy the rest of your week. Have a fabulous weekend when it arrives, and thank you for joining us.